Kitty, look who's here! All our fans are out there!
Apparently, there's been quite a bit of interest recently in U.S. classic knives. Now, I've known about these knives for quite some time, basically since when they were first coming out. Well, actually, around the tail end of when they were first coming out. I learned about them around 2009 or so, and the knives actually came out around 2005, 2006, something like that. And their timing could not have been worse, considering the name of the knife, U.S. Classic, and the fact that they were being made in China. And they caught a lot of crap back in the day when they first came out, despite being fairly well-made knives, because the knives, I believe, were made in the same factory as the Rough Rider knives, and they're solid, well-made knives. At least the first run of them were solid, well-made knives. But the biggest gripe when these knives first came out is what you see there, a U.S. Classic Collection, and it said designed in Salt River, Kentucky, 2005. Well, now, that in itself is a little bit of an issue, because if you try to find Salt River, Kentucky in on a map, you'll find out that there is a Salt River in Kentucky, which is a couple hundred miles long or so, but there is no town called Salt River, at least as far as I can find. And so, were they made in the river? In any case, that was one of the complaints that people had with it. This was the earlier boxes that came with them. And you see right there, Salt River, Kentucky, 2005. I don't know if the knives actually showed up in 2005 or if they showed up in 2006. Might have been at the end of 2005 that they first started showing up. In any case, it's a really nice looking box, especially I kind of like both boxes, but this one's pretty cool with the basic cardboard with the little pointers on there. And if you notice here, U.S. Classic Knives, and then over on this side, and nowhere on the box does it say made in China. But the knives were made in China, and that was one of the things that a lot of people had issues with. The fact that it says U.S. Classic, and the knives are being made in China, and you don't even stamp the box made in China. Doesn't help with the later boxes. You've got the American Eagle on there, U.S. Classic, and again, nowhere on the box does it say made in China. And it's very hard to find it on many of the knives. Now, to put a few things into perspective, around 2005, 2006, a couple things were going south in the U.S. knife industry. One of them is, I believe that's around the time that Buck started making knives in China. You had the old Schrade knives showing up being made in China. And right around that same time, Camillus started looking at China for its line of Camco knives, their economy knives. And then in 2007, Camillus went bankrupt. And that was truly a blow to the knife collecting community, as well as the knife industry in general, because Camillus, while there were companies that said that they had been around longer and stuff, Camillus was actually the longest continuously running United States factory producing knives. Other companies had been around, but they had had breaks and stuff like that. Camillus had been around the longest, and suddenly they went bankrupt, and the real feeling was, if Camillus can go bankrupt, anybody can go bankrupt. And we already know that by that time, Case was already owned by Zippo and all sorts of other stuff going on. So there was a lot of turmoil in the knife industry in 2007 or 2006, 2005. And for a company to come out with U.S. Classic and making the knives in China, it really left a bitter taste in a lot of people's mouths. Really not the best choice of names for them to choose. And later you would see several other companies also throw in that U.S. something another, or Pride USA and stuff like that. And a lot of people really disdained the idea of a box labeling it, or a box with an American flag on it, but the knife being made in China. I mean, it really felt like deceptive advertising, I guess you could say. You know, why are you sticking an American flag on the box and making the knife in China? And I think a lot of people had a good point with that. But anyway, who actually made these U.S. Classic knives, and were they any good? Now, a lot of the information on the company is a little bit sketchy. And from what I understand, some new owners have taken over the brand and are going to try and release or come out with new knives under U.S. Classic again. Now, this is not the first time this has happened. I believe it's also happened back around 2013, 2014 or so. But the original brand, I think, ran from like around 2005 to 2009, and then pretty much went under. I know that around 2010, 2011 or thereabouts, I was trying to get a hold of the company through their webpage, and really could not get anywhere. They did not answer their 1-800 phone number. They did not return emails or anything else, so I believe by that time they were defunct, even though they had products still listed on their webpage as available. And now, at that time, the company was known as 3Ds Inc., but the name most associated with the U.S. Classic brand is a man named Earl Collins. And apparently he was an entrepreneur who had a unnamed friend who had a large collection of old early U.S. made knives, and they decided to go in business with a third person. That's why it was 3Ds Inc., and formed this company, U.S. Classics, and they were going to take these old knives, old patterns of early U.S. made knives, and break them down and have them made in China. And so these were supposedly reproductions of existing early American knives. But I can tell you right now that, well, I'm looking directly at this knife here, and this was not an early American knife. This is actually a knife that was made by Case in 2003. And this is the Case bartender knife built off of their gun stock jackknife. It was just modified, and these date from 2003. So much for early American patterns and stuff. And some of the other knives they had, obviously they had like trappers and stockmans and so on and so forth. And many of those knives were already available through other knife companies such as Schrade and obviously Case and Camillus and a few other companies. So not every pattern was really that old or had gone away, but they did have some very interesting patterns and things that were slightly different than what you were seeing elsewhere. And as you can tell here, I do not have a lot, and that's mainly because the primary reason I was buying the U.S. Classic knives was to fill voids in my collection of white smooth bone knives. So if it wasn't being made by Rough Rider, I was basically getting it from U.S. Classic, such as the bartender knife, and such as this sort of seahorse whittler. I mean, it is based off of a seahorse whittler, but it has only got 2 blades. But you see the Wharncliffe blade there, so it's like a Wharncliffe half whittler. And if you're looking there, where does it say China? And then you come over here. We know the year it was made, 2007. But where does it say China on the knife? Well, we gotta go in real close here. Gonna go bigger. You see it there? U.S. Classic, China. On the other side, U.S. Classic Knives. And that was one of the things that people were complaining about, is you really have to hunt for where they put China on the knives. It is often very small and very hard to find. Yes, the knife was made in China, but they sure didn't want you to know that, especially considering the front box says designed in Salt River, Kentucky. So a couple of people somewhere in Kentucky designed the knives, but they were being made in China. And they were not very clear about that. But the knife itself is pretty good. This is the white smooth bone. Like I said, it's kind of a half whittler or a half seahorse whittler or half Wharncliffe whittler. And you've got a half stop on the small blade. Nice small straight Skinner blade here. Which I suppose if you wanted to, you could change it. The action is not as smooth as it should be, but I really need to clean this up. And you've got a nice Wharncliffe blade there, and the knife feels good in the hand. The only problem I had with it, and the main reason I wasn't buying more of the white smooth bone knives from U.S. Classic, is they had this annoying habit of putting shields on all of their white smooth bone knives, and I would have preferred it if they did not have a shield. And the Rough Rider knives do not have shields, so I went and got mostly Rough Rider knives. Should have backed out a little earlier. And then this is the whittler I picked up from them, and again, it's a really nice knife. The pull on these things is harder than you have on a Rough Rider. Again, you see U.S. Classic here. Let's go back in. U.S. Classic, Salt River, Kentucky. Clearly displayed right on the tang. U.S. Classic on the blade there. And this one is an earlier one. Now, the last one was 2007. See, this one, 2005. This is the first year of production. Again, are you seeing China anywhere? There we go. China. Very small on the back of a blade. On one of the smaller blades. And that was the thing. It was not consistent, and you just had to kind of hunt around for it. And it's pad stamped as opposed to really stamped deeply into it. So easy to remove, which was something else that people complained about, that you could easily remove these pad stampings on the blade, and then people would think that this knife was actually made in Salt River, Kentucky. Easy to do that. And that was the big complaint that people were having. This is an interesting Barlow. I like the embossing on the bolster there. You got the little pointer dog, which was the symbol of the knives. You see that on a lot of the blades and stuff, the little pointer. Again, U.S. Classic, Salt River, and you got to hunt around for where it says China. The good thing is they all had the date 06. They were all dated clearly. And then we have China on the back of the blade again. But that was the big complaint that people were having with them. Now, the first one I bought is still my favorite out of all the ones that I have from there. And it was the main reason I ended up looking at other U.S. classic knives. And that was this one here. This is in the Tiger Eye acrylic. And it's their this is the first Congress I ever bought, and it was also remains probably my favorite Congress, next to that six blade Congress I have with the stag handles. And it's got all the typical blades you see in it. You've got the coping blade here, and the back blade here. Is this the one that says China on it? Let's zoom in again. Yeah, U.S. Classic. This one is from '09 and China. U.S. Classic, Salt River, Kentucky. Kentucky Knives, KY Knives. I think everyone knows who that is. That is Gary Yoakum. He had a eBay store, KY Knives, and I think this is one of them that was made in conjunction with him. He also has the Raging Bull knives. Already showed the coping. And one of the things that Gary Yoakum had on his page was the fact that, yes, these knives are made in China, but they're really excellent knives. And he actually had a notice on his page, a very clear notice that said, unless this knife is marked, otherwise it is made in China. So he wanted people to know that very clearly that the knives they were buying were made in China, and stop complaining about it, because and I mean, it was a big notification that he had on his page. So that because that was the biggest complaint, and he'd say, well, return the knife if you don't like it. But he stood by his knives very well. This is the last, well, also I've got this one here. We'll go into the toothpick in a minute. We see the little dog on the shield there, and U.S. Classic Salt River, U.S. Classic on the back of the blade. Going again. Oop. China and knives. And we can find out where this knife, or when this knife was made too, I think. Nice sheepfoot blade. And this knife has half stops all around, long before Rough Rider was putting half stops on all around. 440 Razor Edge 07. And that was the other thing. The Rough Rider said 440 razor sharp stainless steel, and the U.S. Classics went with 440 Razor Edge. In any case, these are all from the first run as far as I'm concerned, or maybe the first or second runs, but these were when they were being made from 2005 to 2009. This knife came from the second run, and at first glance it looks as good as these, but it's not as good. These are made in the Rough Rider factory, and they are up to par with Rough Rider knives. This one, which came out, does it also have it? I don't even think you could see it if it did have it there. Might say it somewhere in there that it's made in China there. I don't know. Still says Razor Edge, but if you notice, this one is from 2014, and this is in the quality that you find in like Right Edge or the Pride USA knives. It's not up to the same snuff. The fit and finish isn't quite as well done. You still have the brass liners, you have the stainless steel back spring, 440A stainless steel blades, and the nickel silver bolsters and stuff, and brass pins. And it's got a nice brass shield, and the dog looks really nice, but the build quality just isn't quite the same. Still a nice tight blade though. And that was something that many people had commented on with these knives, that when they came out again in 2014 or 15, somewhere around there, they just weren't quite as well made as the earlier ones from the 2005 to 2009 period. Now, one more comment about the original run of these knives, or maybe the first couple runs of these knives from back from around 2005 to 2009 or so. Um, I read one source that said that they only made 2,000 of each knife. Another source said 2,500, and I believe the 2,500 is the correct number, because I could have sworn I actually saw that on their actual web page, that they only made 2,500 of each knife. But that doesn't mean that they only made 2,500 of the Congress pattern. It means that they made 2,500 in this like tiger eye acrylic. So they made other Congress, they just would not be in the same handle material. So there were also probably 2,500 of these made in the white smooth bone. They also used some other colors of acrylic, and they also had things like the stag bone here. But like in the stag bone here of this knife, they only made 2,500 of them in the first run. And they made actually two runs of this one. I don't know which run was the first run and which was the second. But they also made a run of this knife without the shield. So you'll find 2,500 of these with a shield, and 2,500 of them without the shield. And same thing with these knives here. You'll find 2,500 of the white smooth bone Barlow, and this is an interesting Barlow. It's not your standard size Barlow, as you can see here. This is a 3-inch Barlow, but there's 2,500 of these white smooth bone Barlows floating around, and then there's 2,500 of them in other handle materials and so on and so forth. So they made quite a few of them, but of any particular handle material, there's only 2,500 of them. So I have also seen this in orange smooth bone. So there's 2,500 in orange smooth bone, 2,500 in white smooth bone. I don't know what the status is for the later ones in the that came out in 2014 or so. I don't know if they continue to keep the practice of just making it, if they just made 2,500 of them in this blue acrylic or not. But that is one of the other things that US Classic was doing with these knives. And the purpose of doing it that way was so that they would be a more collectible item, even though they were being made in China. And I think that is why there are people out there who are actually seeking these knives out. And some people are paying really stupid prices for them, because are they worth the $10 to $12 that you were paying for them when they first came out? Yeah, I think they probably were. In today's prices, they'd probably be going for about $16 to $18 if they were new coming out today, because that's about what you pay for a Rough Rider, around $16 to $18. And these are a good, solid $16 to $18 knife new. Are they worth double that or triple that some people are asking? Well, that's really up to you as a knife collector. To me, it depends on how bad I want it. I mean, if I could find some more of the Tiger Eye and US Classic knives, I might go as high as $30 or $40 for one, because they are a really well-made knife, and they're just not easy to find. But if they were to come out new from the US Classic with a new tank stamp, then I'm expecting to pay about $16 for it, and I would be happy with it. Any case, hope you enjoyed this rundown of the US Classic knives. I will do a very brief slideshow of the ones that I have, and then call it a day. let me take just a second to thank you once again for dropping by and spending a few minutes here at Knife Chats with the Pious. I really do appreciate it, and I do appreciate any comments that you leave. So please remember to give me that thumbs up, and also don't forget to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you'll know when the next episode is up and running. Thanks again for dropping by. Really do appreciate your time here.